All right, just a quick short for any history enthusiasts or people just curious about history, which is good to know about our history. That way we're not doomed to repeat it. We all know that old saying, which is true. So basically, just talk about the Battle of Stalingrad, which I think is the bloodiest or heaviest battle in World War II. Almost 2 million people died in that small industrial city for specific reasons, at the time. The Nazis wanted to take it from Soviets just to secure the southeastern Soviet oil fields and disrupt Soviet supply lines, which was an important strategic militaristic point. And the Soviets and the Red Army wanted to defend it and keep it from falling into Nazi hands. And they were willing to do whatever it takes in order to do that, and they did. Almost 2 million people, all between soldiers and innocent people, died in that city. Now they call Volgograd, if I'm not mistaken, they rename it. So here we go. I'm gonna read a little bit. The Battle of Stalingrad was a massive urban confrontation on the Eastern Front of World War II, waged from late August 1942 to early February 1943 between Nazi German-led Axis forces and the Soviet Red Army for possession of the industrial city of Stalingrad, now Volgograd. On the Volga River, German Army Group B, spearheaded by the Sixth Army under General Friedrich Paulus, aimed to seize the city as a key objective in Operation Case Blue to secure the southeastern Soviet oil fields and disrupt Soviet supply lines. Very important militaristic point. And Soviet supply lines, but overextended supply lines and reliance on weaker Allied contingents from Romania, Italy, and Hungary exposed their flanks. All those were part of the Axis powers. The Soviet defense, bolstered by reinforcement and ruthless orders to hold position at all costs, transitioned to a counteroffensive with Operation Uranus on 19 November 1942, which encircled over 250,000 Axis troops in the city and surrounding areas by exploiting the vulnerabilities of the Axis satellite armies. Trapped without adequate relief despite a failed German attempt by Army Group A to break the pocket in December, the encircled forces endured extreme winter conditions. The extreme winter from Russia at that time was ruthless for both sides, but the Russians were used to it because they lived there. Shortage of food and ammunition and continuous Soviet assaults leading to the systematic destruction of the Sixth Army. Field Marshal Paulus surrendered on 31 January 1943, followed by the remaining pockets on February, marking the first large-scale defeat of a German field army in the war and resulting in the capture of about 91,000 Axis prisoners, many of whom perished in the Soviet captivity due to harsh treatment and disease. Total casualties exceeded 1.8 million, with Soviet losses disproportionately high from both combat and Stalin's penal measures against retreating units. Basically, at the time, the Red Army was, from a neutral point or perspective, the Red Army was a slave army because they only have two options: die fighting for their country or die for not fighting for their country. That's why Stalin killed like 500,000 people for not fighting for them. Combat Stalin penal measures against retreating units, underscoring the battle's ferocity as house-to-house fighting devolved into brutal attrition amid rubble and sewers. The Soviet victory at Stalingrad halted the Axis advance into the Soviet Union, shattered German morale, and enabled subsequent Red Army offensives that reclaimed vast territories, fundamentally shifting the strategic momentum on the Eastern Front toward eventual Allied triumph in Europe. Hitler's insistence on no withdrawal, combined with underestimation of Soviet resilience and reserves, exemplified casual factors in the defeat, while the battle scale highlighted the war's total nature, with ideological fanaticism driving both sides to extraordinary lengths. And that's why you end up getting what you get. 2 million people dead, and an entire city erased from the map. You can find pictures of what Stalingrad looked during and after the fighting. And that's the harsh reality of a war. For anyone, like I said, interested in history, I think it's a good thing to study it, at least as a hobby or maybe on free time. It's a good thing to spend time on. That way you know about history. That way we keep it from happening again, especially knowing how bloody our history is. And I'm sure that anyone that actually aware of where we come from is not willing to go back there. In a good way to keep that from happening is learning from history. That way we don't go back to that old saying that those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And it's a saying for a reason. So I just wanted to do this quick short about it, and maybe I'll do a long video if you guys are interested. But that's what the Battle of Stalingrad was, the bloodiest battle of World War II.